Hey, Miss. And for those of you that we haven't met yet, I'm the Multicultural Officer for the Oklahoma Historical Society. And this is the state agency that is in charge of collecting, preserving, and sharing the history of the culture of Oklahoma and its people. And so that's what we're talking about today, all the people of Oklahoma. And so at some point in my life, I was a teacher, and it was challenging. And so, but that doesn't mean that I stopped teaching.
That's
I
right.
teach in different ways.
That's right.
And I work together with lots of teachers, and so you're here, and we're proud that you're here. And so we're gonna introduce our guest today. Our guest, her name is Rebecka Peterson. She's the 2023 National Teacher of the Year, and she is the teacher that loves stories. And so Ms. Rebecka Peterson, she has taught in high school math classes ranging from intermediate algebra to advanced placement calculus for 11 years at Union High School in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Amid a difficult first year of high school teaching, she found the One Good Thing blog. She credits daily posting there to helping her recognize the beautiful and positive experiences occurring in her classroom, which inspire her to stay in the profession. She has since contributed 1,400 posts to the blog. As Oklahoma Teacher of the Year, she has visited teachers across the state to highlight their important work through the Teachers of Oklahoma campaign. As National Teacher of the Year, Rebecka plans to use her platform to highlight teachers' stories of the good that's happening in education. Teaching is a profession that affords creativity, autonomy, and purpose. And Rebecka believes that highlighting the stories of joy happening in classrooms across the country will help encourage current teachers and attract new educators to the profession. We need them. Rebecka is a proud immigrant of Swedish-Iranian descent and lived in several countries around the world as her parents traveled as medical missionaries. Her own experience with supportive teachers who celebrated her diversity and math abilities informs Rebecka's efforts to create a supportive and accessible classroom for students. She values listening to students' stories as a way to better understand them and elevate their voice. Before joining the faculty at Union High School, Rebecka taught for 3 years at the collegiate level. She holds a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Oklahoma Wesleyan University and a master's degree in mathematics from the University of South Dakota. She lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with her husband, Brett, and son, Jonas, and she enjoys reading, crafting, and playing board games. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to go ahead and start with some of the
Yeah.
questions. And so tell us, where exactly were you born?
Yeah, I was born in Uppsala, Sweden, to an Iranian dad and a Swedish mom. So I like to joke I'm what you get when you take two very opposite geographical extremes. But yeah, I was born in Sweden.
Okay. When was that? Can we know?
Sure. 1987. I'm going to be 36 on Monday, and 36 is just a really great number. Like, think about all the factorizations. I'm just really excited for 36.
That is correct. So, as a child, can you tell us a favorite moment?
Yeah, I think something that stands out is, my dad was basically a double immigrant. And then my parents had me in Sweden. We immigrated here. And so I didn't have a lot of extended family close by. So the moments when my Swedish grandparents came to visit us, particularly around the holidays, those stand out as really special and favorite moments, learning how to cook like Swedish pastries with my grandma, and being multicultural. I oftentimes felt like I was living in 3 different countries within the same city, and then getting to have like a piece of that culture, like as a piece of you, getting that to like come to your home. I don't know, it's just really beautiful and something that is just a core memory.
That is beautiful. Oh, Grandma's cooking.
Grandma Sonia.
Yeah. So So as a child, I understand you grew up with medical missionaries. And so in sometimes when you're the child of a missionary, it requires you to move around a lot in different schools, different environments, and sometimes they might have to be homeschooled. So was that your case?
That's
Can
right.
you share some of your educational journey?
Yeah. So we moved to the States when I was in preschool, so I was young, but then my parents traveled a lot. And so they did short-term missions, which we got to do with them, but they also did long-term missions. So we spent a year in Kazakhstan, which borders Russia, Mongolia, China, a year in Tajikistan. Actually, my freshman year of high school was in Tajikistan, just north of Afghanistan. So very poverty-stricken, 80% of the population lived below the poverty line. And it's quite the untethering experience, to be honest, to not just move from city to city, but like continent to continent and be kind of just removed from everything that feels like home, other than your family. And so I say, it's a really quite an untethering experience, but now I teach at an incredibly diverse, just culturally rich district, Union Public Schools. We have 62 languages represented, and so a lot of my students are first-generation Americans or immigrants as well. And so, what used to untether me as a child now tethers me to my students, and so I'm so very grateful. I'm so very grateful to have such a global upbringing.
It is. And so throughout that time, did you have any teacher, any person that helped you embrace the newness, constant newness?
Yeah, of course. I think that's like how we all became teachers, right? Because we think of those people that held such significance in our lives. I think a lot about my elementary teachers because I came, I was a language learner, but no one ever called me a language learner. They said, to be bilingual is a gift. Your diversity makes you beautiful, are always the messages I got. And so even though I often felt like an outsider, we say it, like what we say to our students becomes their inner voice. And I am testimony of that I would come back to that inner voice that my elementary teachers planted in me, that like I am different, but that makes me beautiful, right? And so they taught me to be proud of my heritage and not ashamed of it. And then in middle school, I had just a incredibly powerful math and science teacher, Mrs. West. And do y'all remember kind of the narrative of like women's brains just aren't quite wired right for mathematics? Yeah. But here she was, a female in math, and she just looked me square in the eyes and said, "Rebecka, math is your superpower." Right? So once again, she planted that seed. It became my inner voice. And that really toxic narrative that said women don't have a place in STEM just kind of bounced off, right? Because her words protected me. And then I had just a really phenomenal advisor in undergrad who challenged me with the words of like, where is your heart leading? And I realized my heart was leading me to high school teaching. Yeah, so teachers, they make a difference.
I think they do. And so how did you end up choosing math? Because of the teacher's comment, or was there something else?
Yeah, I think largely because of Mrs. West. My dad really instilled a love of mathematics, but I think it's just always been in me. For me, math is really rhythmic and meditative, and it was my go-to, it was my safe place throughout all these moves. I could always come back to math. That I didn't always know if the way I was going to solve a problem would take me to the solution, but I knew it would get me closer to the solution. And there's just, how like reading kind of transports us out to another world. Math to me like transports us in to ourselves. And when I am immersed in a problem, particularly if I don't quite know like how I'm going to solve it originally, it heals me. There's a healing aspect to kind of being in my own world. And I've just always loved math, even if I get frustrated with it. And I tell my students that like struggling in math is no more the enemy than sweating is in football, right? Like it's proof we're in the game. There's something really comforting about mathematics for me.
It is for me as well. Yeah. And many of the international students that I've worked with, feel comfortable with math.
Yeah, and it's a language, and it's a universal language. I think it's also the language of the universe, you know? And so it's something, when taught in a really safe way, something we can all like love and appreciate and connect to.
I agree. And so you went to college or through college. What was your first job? Was it math related?
Yeah. So in my bio, I taught college math for 3 years. So I graduated from Oklahoma Wesleyan, and then I took a job as a graduate teaching assistant, teaching college algebra while I was working on my master's. So that was, my first job was a form of a math teacher. And then I taught for a year at Tulsa Community College. And part of my assignment was teaching concurrent classes at Union High School. So Union asked me to kind of make the switch, and I thought, how hard can it be to switch from college teaching to high school teaching? Turns out it was hard. But yeah, my first job was teaching college math.
Yeah, one of the comments I had from a former teacher supervisor was that the age has a lot to do with being stable in the class, in the school, and wanting to learn. And so, yes, from college to high school.
You pay to hear someone say something versus you're kind of like forced to hear something. Turns out it makes a difference.
Okay, so, but then you're also a mom,
Yeah.
a professional wife. And so how has it been balancing being a professional woman and also being a mom and also caring for the students?
Yeah.
Where do you find the balance?
I don't know. I'm kind of like unpacking that word balance, because I think our culture kind of tells us like you have all these compartments, you know, and you have your like work life and your home life. And certainly to some extent, I think that is true. But I think one way for me to achieve balance is more to merge the lives together. Like my husband comes and travels with me a lot. You know, we go to Friday night football games or, you know, weekday basketball games. And yeah, a student invited me, you know, and yes, it helps me as a teacher. But it's also something fun we do as a family. And so I think looking more at how it's okay to blend all the pieces, I think is what I'm trying to say. Like it's okay to merge, because I think it's really healthy for our families to see us in our work, to understand what we're doing. And I think that's how we as a family can really support each other, because my husband and our son see me in my work, which I think is particularly important this year for our second grader, who he could wrap his head around mom's a math teacher at the high school, right? This work this year is a little bit more nebulous, and so it's important that he sees what mom does, I think.
Yes, thank you. And so, but you still gotta stay connected to what is happening in the world of education. So is there a way that you keep up with the research?
There's a lot. I think the best way is that to surround myself with people I really respect, and so that you know, when they recommend an article or when they connect me to somebody else, that it's really, I know that it's really quality. But I mean, I can think of, you know, like Edutopia and EdWeek, like they produce just such really quality work, and so I try to keep up with what they push out, particularly as it relates to high school teaching.
Always finding a better way, right?
Yeah.
So when you, as a teacher, what were some of those tools or actions that helped you or helped your students stay motivated?
Yeah. For me, it just comes down to connections. So the first day of school, I sort of have abandoned my traditional first day of school stuff, and instead I am pretty vulnerable with my students, and I share my story, both the joys and the struggles of being an immigrant, of traveling a whole lot, and yes, I have a lot of students that can relate to feeling like you're in one country at home and another country at school and maybe a third country at grandma's house, right? But even my students that were born and raised in Tulsa, they can all relate to that feeling of being an outsider, And so that's where I start, and I just say, I don't want you. I grew up feeling like I had to earn my way, right? I had to learn how to talk like an American, dress like an American, make the grades to make my American teachers happy, and I never want you to feel like you have to work to fit in. I want you to know you belong exactly as you are. There's nothing you need to say or do, no grades you have to earn. You are in, and we belong to each other, period. But saying that is not just going to magically make it that way, right? We have to show them with our actions. And so after I sort of take the first day to share my story, share where we're going in math class, then I say I would really love to learn your story as well. And so I invite them to sign up for 15-minute time slots to come tell me their story, and they come before school, after school, during lunch, during non-instructional time. And I originally just did this with my calculus students, which I guess I still do. It started with, I think, a roster of 50, and now it's over 100. So it started a little bit smaller, but now it takes about 10 weeks, to sit with over 100 teenagers one-on-one. And there are days that are heavy, right? Because our kids have carried a lot. Even at 16, 17, 18, they have overcome a lot. But once those weeks are over, I don't know how to explain it other than saying there is this palpable atmospheric shift. And it's everyone's in, everyone belongs, everyone has a seat at the table. And trust is built, right? Because kids spell love T-I-M-E. And so when they have a teacher that has given them her time, they work pretty darn hard in calculus, right? Because they know I care, and they know that I'm not going to ask them to do something I don't think they can do, and that it may take time, but I'm never going to leave their side. And that to me, those connections, that's the secret sauce.
Amazing. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So, but then that has led you to become awarded in so many different ways as well, because we can see the results. And so out of the multiple awards that you may have received, even getting an A on an exam, what is one of those meaningful awards that you can remember?
Yeah, I know I shirk to talk about it because there's sort of the stigma, right, of it's like you're the best teacher, and there's no such thing, right? There is no such thing as the best teacher. There's an infinite number of ways to be highly effective, and I try to say, I didn't win a competition, right? I was selected for a job. That is it, and it's going to be someone else's job a year from now. And so while these accolades, I think they're important that they exist, because when we elevate a teacher's voice, we elevate the entire profession, right? But it needs to be about the profession and not me. But these awards are going to come and go. The thing I'm most proud of is my family. Yeah. So to be married to Brett and to be Jonas's mom, that's something that's never going to go away. And I would give it all back before, if it meant hindering anything with them.
We have quite a few female teachers here, and so we're going to try to hold ourselves.
Our heart leaks out of our eyes a lot. It's okay.
And so, out of the many accolades, how have they transformed you into being effective in being the voice and raising the voice of so many teachers?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, is that there is the sort of knee-jerk reaction of you're just like, why me? when there are literally 44,000 incredible educators in our state alone, and so when you really have to kind of do a check and be like, well, then I have to try to use the spotlight I have to shine a light on the other educators in the state, in the district, in the country. And so that's what I attempted to do as State Teacher of the Year, was I committed to trying to find educators in our state's 77 counties who serve our 700,000 public school students, and I think I logged 24,000 miles last school year just like driving to these teachers' buildings, watching them in their natural habitats of the classroom, and then interviewing them like during their planning period. So learning their stories, since I wasn't in my own classroom last year and couldn't learn my students' stories, learning teachers' stories, and then sharing about the good and important work that our teachers all across our state are doing. I keep saying I hope that I can be like a mirror, that there's a piece of me or my story or my classroom that relates, that other people see a piece of themselves in. But ultimately, like science has taught us, what a mirror does is reflect light. And that's what I hope. I hope I can just reflect the light that is happening all across our country because of teachers.
So you recently met First Lady and educator, Dr. Jill Biden.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe that experience?
Yeah, it was surreal. We all were invited into the Oval Office, and my father got to come, who's from Iran, and I can still hear him saying, I know you talk, yes, Dr. Biden, but I can hear him saying, Mr. President, please don't forget about Iran. And that moment was made possible not because of a judge or a lawyer or a politician. It was made possible because of a teacher, And then our son left, and he goes, that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you, Mom, but not me, because I'm going to be a State Teacher of the Year when they do it. But he had never talked about wanting to be a teacher before. But when he saw it elevated to this level, now he's still saying, like, I'm going to be a teacher. And I just think that's a microcosm of what happens when kids see this profession elevated, then they want to be in the profession with us. But yeah, it was just such a surreal experience. I remember thinking a lot like, take it in, don't forget. But when we left, and it took me a couple of days to process, I thought, I never once didn't feel like, I felt like I belonged there. I was never made to feel like less than. And here I am, like an immigrant, a bilingual, bicultural immigrant standing in the Oval Office carrying the stories of immigrant and first-generation students with me, and not once was I made to feel less than. And politics aside, like that's what I want in our leaders. I want our leaders to do what teachers do, and that is to make sure everyone has a seat at the table and everyone belongs.
There's more that you can learn about by visiting on the website ntoy.ccsso.org. There's more pictures and lots of things being shared, and it's the Council of Chief of State School Officers. So, it just seeing those images, and I think you helped us feel just a piece of it. And thank you for sharing it in your personal social media, because it's allowing us to see that it's possible, that it's reachable.
Yeah.
And here in Oklahoma, we have so many heavy topics, but it's possible. Someone from Oklahoma has done it. So it's doable. And so that makes us feel very proud about it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say just someone, it's all of us, right? Like, I'm not who I am on my own. Like, I'm standing on the shoulders of the teachers of this great state. So this goes to all of us, it's not mine.
So now we're going to move on to some questions sent, additional questions sent by the attendees in here. And so one of the questions is, what made you stand out from other candidates? Because all of us are doing great things. Mm-hmm. What do you think helped you a lot?
Yeah, I don't know. I ask myself that every day. Especially when we get to do 5 trips as state teachers of the year, and we just did our 3rd trip. And yeah, I ask myself, when I'm with the other state teachers of the year, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I would say I would say positivity, optimism. It carries a lot because I mean you didn't stop teaching. You were teaching while you were also sharing positive messages and sharing the positive effects and the impact of education. And none of us is saying that it's easy.
Right. Yeah.
It's just that you're, and I've said it before, I've been in many different places with the same number of people, except that I share about it. And I highlight the positives. Yeah. And I think that also applies to you. You're sharing the positives, the looking at the bright light in the midst of all of it.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I really had one foot out the door that year. I switched from college to high school teaching. I was like, this is too hard. And then I stumbled upon the community blog called One Good Thing. And it was a collective where teachers were just writing good things that happened in their classrooms. And they live by the mantra, every day may not be good, but there's something good in every day. And that quote just really hit me because it didn't ignore, every day may not be good. It didn't ignore that this job was hard, right? But it did insist on taking ownership of my day. And so I was I don't know, overly committed author on that blog that was just I'm going to write every single day. I'm going to write something good. But it changed my brain, right? And the brain science backs it up. I was activating my reticular activating system, my brain's filtering system. So when I was so intentional about noticing something good every day, the part of my brain that filtered the good expanded, right? And allowed me to see more good. And I say it's true. I didn't know how hard this job was going to be, but I also did not know how good it was going to be.
Very true. So another question says, as a first-generation Mexican-American daughter of 2 immigrants, I have always strived to make the United States a more inclusive community for all who live here and chose to make this place their home. So in your bio, you mentioned how much you value listening to your students, stories as a way to better understand them and elevate their voice. So what was your experience like when you were growing up in a multicultural environment, and especially how did teachers support and advocated for you?
Yeah, I think we touched on this, but it is it's just hard growing up different, right? I remember not understanding what Halloween and Thanksgiving were all about, and then feeling ashamed that I didn't understand. My maiden name is Kedman Shahi. We would have teachers that everybody else was Mr. Smith or Miss Jones, and then it would come to my name on the roster, and I'd just be Rebecca. And it was just they're just these little moments where you're reminded that, I'm an outsider, right? And then I had other teachers that did the exact opposite. But I think some of those moments where in education I did feel like the outsider, maybe in some ways were even more impactful for me as a teacher because it reminds you of what you don't want your students to feel, right? And so, I think what gives me life is to help my students have that American dream, But to do that, they have to feel safe in school.
Now, what is the best one thing high school math teachers can do, learn, practice to help form a stronger math students?
I mean, I think it doesn't have to be math. I think it goes back to learning our students' stories, and because we can't capture the mind until we've captured the heart, right? And so it does not have to be like literally pulling up a seat for every single kid, but finding out our students' hopes and dreams and their passions, also finding out, what they're carrying with them, the joys, yes, but also some of the struggles. Because once they know we care about them as human beings, then we can really push them and support them as students. But I have, like, I can show you qualitative results of how our AP, pass rate has gone up once I really started learning my students' stories. But to me, the quantitative, matters much more than being able to pass an AP calculus test at the end, and to know that they felt loved and supported and nurtured. That's why we do it, right?
So, what advice do you have for schools to recruit and retain new teachers to the profession?
How long we got? Well, so for recruiting, one thing I'm seeing that a lot of other states are doing that we have really not systematized in Oklahoma is more robust teacher pathways. So a lot of other states actually have high school classes for future teachers, and we certainly have some districts doing that here and there, but we haven't systematized that as a state like other states have done. And so I think that's huge because there's really strong data showing that a good chunk of these students then actually go into teacher prep programs and then come back to their home district, or very close to their home district. So to me, that's a big piece of the recruitment aspect. I also think we need a more robust para to teacher program. I mean, in my dream, I would say instead of 18 weeks or whatever of student teaching, a whole year of being a para, and with teaching aspects built into it. Because I think seeing a whole year before you're in it yourself is really important. I don't know. But for the recruitment aspect, retainment aspect, I think that actually that would help with retaining teachers as well, because it would allow our more veteran teachers to move up without moving out of the classroom. Our teachers are learners, but it's hard to learn if things don't change, right? So you grow the most when things are changing the most. And so I think a lot of our excellent educators step out because they want to keep growing and learning, and we're not giving them that opportunity a whole lot oftentimes to stay in the classroom. So I think mentorship programs would aid both recruitment and retention, not just creating mentorship programs, but funding them is sort of a vital piece there. But yeah, more opportunities for teachers to move up without moving out of the classroom, I really think is what it comes down to for me.
Going outside of our bubble environment allows us to learn what's working in different places.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think it's powerful, to understand what is working and try to apply it in the way that works here. And so I'm so glad that we have this knowledge, because you're learning what's working outside of Oklahoma, as when you did going across the state. Now you're doing it across the nation. And so that's powerful. That's really good. And so there's this thought of not promoting higher education as much, and this war against education, it's frightening, because we need doctors, and I would I wouldn't like a doctor that learned from YouTube. I would prefer one that went to school, had higher education. So how do you motivate these teachers to continue throughout this culture of the war against education in general?
Yeah, I think that joy is our rebellion, you know, and we hold the chalk. This is our profession. This is our profession. And we have to be talking about the good things happening, because if we don't, there's going to be a counter narrative, right? And so we have to be so loud and proud about the good and true that is happening inside our classrooms, right? No one else gets to write this story. No one else is in the buildings like we are. So, you know, as I've written 1,400 good things in my classroom, and then I got to spend last school year writing good things happening all across our state. And I always came back to, like, I hope that I can shout the good so loud that any counter narrative becomes like softer and softer. And I'm not sure engaging in battles is going to get us very far. But if we say, I'm not playing this game, let me show you another way, I think that might do us better. And we just got to keep coming back to our student stories. We have to keep coming back to our student stories, because no one can dispute that. No one can tell you that didn't happen when you're sitting here saying this happened, right? And so we have to share our stories, and we have to be so loud about the good. And as you know, as I've written more and more about good happening in my classroom and in other classrooms, I think I've really gotten a better grasp of what joy is. And to me, like, joy is not binary, right? Joy is not the opposite of sadness. Joy can hold it all, right? The wins and the losses, right? The good days, the bad days, the grief and the triumph. And as educators, we hold so much. But joy in the end says, I'm going to insist on the good, the true, and the light having the final word. And so joy is our rebellion.
Love that. And I'm going to say that also helps in avoiding burnout.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I say that blog saved my career. Finding the good saved my career.
And it's hard to find joy when we're having to turning assignments and listening and teaching and preparing the next 10,000 things that we have on our plate. And so reminding us about those positive moments in the day, daily, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you for that reminder. And so now you're going to look at your day in a different way. And we have to be intentional.
You have to be so intentional about it. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be writing, right? It can be like sending a voice note to yourself, or Brett has an app called Happy Feed, and he just takes a picture every day and a quick caption, right? So you're educators, differentiate as you see best, but we have to be intentional about making space for the good things to land, because if we don't make space, we're going to miss them.
True that. So now, let's say we have a large new group of educators, first year. What is your best advice for them?
Don't isolate yourself. Lean into your colleagues. Go try to observe some colleagues during, I know it's one more thing, but during a planning period here or there, go watch other colleagues. Don't feel like you have to do this work alone. Because if we do this work alone, there's a design flaw, right? This work is not doable alone. So find your people that will support you, will let you vent when you need to vent, but then will turn back around and remind you of your good and important work.
If you have the power to change one policy that is impacting education right now, is there one that you can think of, like right on top?
I really want to see policy for teacher prep programs, because what are schools without qualified teachers? We can't do this work. We can talk about all the high-level stuff as much as we want, but we don't have teachers doing the work. This stuff doesn't matter. And so we've got to get highly qualified people in the classrooms. In Finland, we all know how great Finland is in education, but you have to graduate in the top third of your high school class to even be considered to go into a teacher prep program. I mean, what a novel concept that you had to be good at this to teach this, Yeah, and so, but we've got to figure out ways to make this profession something students want to do, right? And I think we have a real opportunity, because Gen Z is marking job purpose as their highest goal, and so this job has a lot of purpose, right? But we also have to elevate it, and so what does that look like to change the narrative on being a teacher is like in Finland, it's like being a doctor, right? So I think creating policy that incentivizes districts to make these teacher pathways is a really big step. And then, having signing days for our future teachers, just like we have for our athletes, elevate the profession, make it a big deal to become a teacher, because you are changing lives, right? And this is something we as educators, I think, have to do as well, because we are the PR for this profession. And so if we're not encouraging kids to go into this profession, if we're not tapping someone on the shoulder and saying, I think you'd be great at this, who is going to do that, And so I think we as educators have to work on policy 100%, but then also say, we have a role to play here too, because I care very much about who my colleagues are in 5 to 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. I care very much about who's teaching our kid, who's going to teach our potential grandkids. And so how we approach our work matters, right? How we talk about our work matters. How we talk about our students, our colleagues, our administrators, it all matters. So I think just as much as we hold our student stories, right, we also have to hold our own stories and be like, what we do is incredible, powerful work, right? It's the fabric of our communities, and we have to really be our own PR people and encourage our bright young students to enter this profession as well. That was a whole tangent, sorry.
Loved it, loved it. And so time is just happening so fast, going so fast, and I wish we could have more time, but I know you will continue to touch some of these topics in your personal presentations, and so you can follow her, and she's going to continue to share some of her thoughts, really good thoughts. So, but at the end of the day, you're a human being.
Yeah.
And so what do you do in your time off? What do you suggest teachers to do?
Yeah, whatever you love to do. I think the one thing we don't talk about a whole lot that I think is really important is that we take care of our bodies, because our bodies and our minds are, they're so connected. And so whatever is good for your body in terms of eating, in terms of sleeping, in terms of exercise, in terms of, being mindful, just that we're taking care of our bodies, because we talk a lot about the whole child, but we need a whole educator for a whole child to happen, right? And I'd also like to see policy work done there, but for now, we have to take care of ourselves. So take care of our bodies, take care of our hearts, surround yourself with the friends who are gonna pour into you, right? Who, again, who will let you vent, but then will also be like, yeah, but. you are changing lives, right? So surrounding yourself with people that that will embrace you but also challenge you, and and taking care of our own hearts, right? Staying off social media when we need to stay off social media, and guarding our hearts as well.
Ms. Rebecka Peterson, thank you so much for sharing your time.
My joy.
Thank you for letting us know, pick on your brain and your heart. And so I am deeply honored to meet you. And so I'm pretty sure Oklahomans like you, we need them in here as well. And as a woman of a diverse heritage background, as a woman of faith myself, and a working professional mom, I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
May you continue to pursue His calling and allow that light of yours to shine everywhere you go.
Thank you, Sadie. It means so much.
Thank you. And so if you want to follow her, do that as well. And you can hashtag NTOY, National Teacher of the Year, hashtag NTOY, and you can NTOY 23, so that it's her. You can also hashtag OK History if you are taking pictures today, so you'll get to do that as well. And so we're gonna end this interview, and I think you deserve a big round of applause.